coming. Love having David. David is an amazing presenter, and he's very, very generous with his time and the effort he puts into anything he does for us. So I'd just like to welcome David and ask you to just give him a warm round of applause.
Riddick is the third instalment in the Vin Diesel Riddick Pitch Black saga. Chronicles of Riddick was made about 4 years after Pitch Black. I think Pitch Black we had about $18 million and there's quite a long shooting schedule. Shot on film in Cooper Pedy and the studios in Queensland. It was directed by the name of David Twohy, director-writer. David Twohy is a gentleman that I first met when I shot a movie years ago called Warlock, which was David Twohy's first screenplay. He had then after that gone on to be very successful shooting writing films like G.I. Jane and Waterworld and numerous others, Fugitive. Then we did Pitch Black together, and Pitch Black for me was quite a successful movie, as it was for Vin Diesel and David Twohy. Vin Diesel was a nobody before Pitch Black, and now he's a big megastar, as we all know. About 4 years after Pitch Black, they did Chronicles of Riddick. I did meet for Chronicles of Riddick, but David Twohy thought I was too confrontational, and I didn't get the gig. It was a big budget, $110 million, I think very self-indulgent. It just didn't work. The film just didn't work. So some years later, Universal scrapped the whole Riddick movie stories and didn't want to know about it. And Vin Diesel, with all his fame and success from Fast and Furious, I want to do a Riddick, a Pitch Black 3 or Riddick. And they agreed. So we started shooting, not last year, but the year before, in Montreal, Canada. I turned up in Montreal in I think it was the September, for a 6 to 8 week prep. We were due to film in a place called Trudel Studios in Montreal, which is quite a big complex. And they had finance problems with the movie. So they sent me back to Australia for a month and then flew me back to Montreal once they raised the money in November, and did a bit of prep. Then we had a 10-day hiatus over Christmas, which was lovely. And then we started shooting in Montreal in the middle of winter. Fortunately, it was on stage. The whole movie is on stage. The problem was it was a logistic nightmare for me because we're in Trudel Studios, which we were originally going to shoot in, is quite a big studio complex with big studio spaces and grids, and it's a proper film studio. And when the film was pushed, we had to get out, and they shifted us to a warehouse facility where they used to make railway trains, where they shot the movie 300, the original 300, not the new one, which was problematical for a cinematographer because it had 35-foot ceilings. And when the sets of the movie was the whole studio floor, not traditional contemporary sets like you see built within a floor space, the whole floor space was the set on a lot of these scenes you see, with about 500 foot of green screen all around, if not more. Riddick is not a dialogue masterpiece, to say the least. There's a few lines in it which are pretty bad. There's also a sequence in it where it's a bit violent. Somebody gets their head sliced in half. I don't know why. I really think the movie didn't need it, but they wanted an R rating and they pushed for that. And you'll see it. Vin Diesel, interesting guy, nice guy, smart. He's getting a bit old now. He has had a bit of trouble doing these sort of movies, but if there's a Riddick 4, which they're talking about, maybe that'll be the last. But it's very similar to Pitch Black. They decided to go back to the original roots style of anti-hero, superhero, survival on a planet. It's a good film. It's for what it is. It was a 48-day schedule, which is tight for this sort of movie, with a lot of effects. Everything was green screen and creatures and spaceships and whatever. But I hope you enjoy it. Who's seen Riddick already? Okay, a few, that's good. So I hope you enjoy the film. And please, after, ask lots of questions, because that's what gets the ball rolling. And I've got a lot of stills to show you, and some lighting pans for those of you who are interested technically. But let's give it a go, and I'll speak to you after. I won't talk during the film, because that just, you know, I talk too much as it is. Great, thank you. It was a bit of a logistic nightmare, as I mentioned before, because being a factory that had 35-foot ceilings, it's really hard to get your wide shots. And for me, I had to try and figure out a way of lighting it that enabled me to sort of have one shadow cover the whole floor space, and with a film that has a lot of smoke and a lot of rain, you don't want to start putting 100 different lamp sources, because you end up with shafts of light and mouldy shadows. So it really is quite a logistic challenge just to work out how to do a film like this, where you don't have walls, and you, as you said, the dead giveaway is when you have one sun and you see 3 or 4 shadows on the ground. And so I came up with a way of lighting it, which meant we could light a large area, the whole floor space, set space, and only have one shadow and not have any shafts of light and so forth. And that was by utilising large reflectors. And it's a technique I've used before to simulate the moonlight. So we actually purchased 24, I think it was 24 or 42, I'm not too sure, gold lamaze, white one side and gold the other side. And if those don't know what lamaze is, it's a reflective material. And they were 20 feet by 8 feet in size, and we made aluminium frames for them and strategically placed them the length of the set, and the studio place was like 360 feet long, and we placed them, and the reason they were 8 feet by only 8 feet deep, because you normally get 20 by 20s, because anything deeper than that we'd see in the top of frame. So we had to have these letterbox reflectors all the way along, different 4 rows of the length of the studio, and in each of those I put 10Ks and 5Ks with gel on them, and to create that backlit feel. One of the things David Twohy, the director, said is he did not want top light. When we went to Trudell Studio, initially they were filming a Snow White movie, not the one with the Australian actor, and they'd silked the whole ceiling. And the director said, that's one thing I do not want. I want directional light, I want side light, I want backlight. I do not want top light, because it would have been very easy just to have gone in there, but it would look flat and uninteresting. So like Pitch Black, one had to strive to get a certain look of the film and certain chiselled lighting, and not too much light in Riddick's eyes. Whenever you see him in the scene, you try and keep as much light off his eyes as possible so they could put in the reflective source. Again, I said the blacks in this were a little bit disappointing, because you couldn't see anything in a lot of it. And believe me, I like dark, but not that dark, So, any questions? Happy to answer anything you might have. Pitch Black was shot on film, and we utilised a sequence called bleach bypass, because on film there's 3 bleaches, and if you eliminate 1 or 2 or 3 of the bleaches, you end up with this very contrasty effect. They initially did it on films like Seven, and I think Mandy Walker did it on a movie. There was no bleach bypass in Riddick. Riddick was shot on digital. We shot it on Alexas with master primes and recorded on Codex RAW. But there was no bleach bypassing in Riddick. In Pitch Black it was bleach bypass to get that effect. In Riddick it was purely done with lighting and exposure. That's why we went for the contrast as much as possible. The end sequence where he fights the creatures on the peak, the director and I looked at the American version of Woman with the Dragon Tattoo. The opening sequence is very black and white. It's a beautiful imagery, and we tried to create that look as much as possible for the whole sequence at the end, and that was achieved by just having backlight, 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 and lightning effects. But there was no bleach bypass in Riddick. but in pitch black there was. The lighting was, again, as I said, it was a movie where the whole floor space of the studio was the set. And we had green screen around it, 15 feet from the edge of the set, sometimes less than 15 feet for the day sequences, and for the night sequences we just had black curtain. So when you're staging any wide shots, you just wanted that one light source. So, you know, we were able to pan 180 degrees. And the way I did it was, you see these, I was talking about these reflectors. Now the space from here, from the rafters here to the ground is only like 38 feet or something. We also had to deal with these columns. You see these column here? This is down the centre of the main factory floor space. They had these huge columns. So, you know, I don't think I started pulling my hair out when I was looking at this location. So we had to wrap them in black and wrap them in green, and we couldn't have people walk in front of it or behind it. And the way I lit it was, for the night scene, these are gold lames. As I said, there was 24 of them, I think, in total, and they were strategically placed down the length of the studio, and I would bounce these are 10Ks with gel into a gold lame, so when you're shooting that direction, I just had backlight, and when I turned around, we spun the lames, and we couldn't afford to put on winches or anything electrical, so it was a bit like going sailing on a Viking ship. They were done by pulleys and ropes, and then on the other side of the lames, white. So I could actually have a gold back edge or side light or whatever direction I wanted by spinning them, and we had gantries with the guys could walk up some of them and approach it from the top. The lighting grids are on winches. We could lower them down and change gel, otherwise it would have taken too long. And so that whenever I looked in one direction, I only have one shadow for the whole length. And even in the day sequences, that's the night stuff, obviously, with the rain, and even for the day sequences here. There's a little fat fella here. You could see, you know, by just bouncing in, and I wouldn't shoot with the front lit scenario. It enabled me to flip them around in any direction I was shooting, so I could have backlight, side light, backlight, side light. It's like filming outside. Nobody wants to film with the sun behind your shoulder. You always try and get a backlit or side lit scenario, and this is a good way of controlling it. And again, as I said before, with so much rain and smoke and so forth, the good thing about lames is if you have a 300 feet of floor space and you have 5 lames and two 20Ks into each one, and you're looking in that direction, you look down at the floor and they blend in. There's only one shadow, or the shadow's so weak where there's you don't see it. So it enables you to create that one sun look. You know, my pet hate is seeing multi-shadows in day scenes or night scenes. You know, it's like seeing a practical on the wall, and you see the shadow of the practical, you know, from the studio. Like there's something's not right there, you know. And night scenes when there's one moon, but you've got 3 shadows. It's just logistically tricky to work out how to do it. This worked very well, and as I said, it wasn't a huge amount of space, and often the lames or the reflectors were in shot. And we sometimes actually would put one on the ground on the stand, like a 6x, because one of the things about shooting visual effects movies is it's always too clean. You never get any lens flares or any halations. So we purposely put flares in shot. And some of the scenes earlier on where Riddick comes up onto the crest of the hill and the sun's behind him, we've actually got a flare there, and they just digitally, you know, enhance it and paint around it. So that enabled me to light these large areas. See day scenes here, and if you look on the ground, you see this guy here, there's one shadow. Anybody standing, there's just one shadow. So it's a good way of doing it, and no, as I said, no mic shadows or anything. They were all 10K tungstens, no HMIs. I couldn't tell you what gels they were. We had numerous tests we did with different gels. I think they might have been a chocolate or something, or and sometimes we doubled it up. For the moon stuff, or for the night stuff, I think we had an amber and another one. I can't remember the exact gels. The Blu-ray projection didn't quite work as well with the gel colours as I thought. And on the reverse side of the lame is white, so I'd have a bit of white fill. Like Pitch Black. In Pitch Black, the thing is they had 24 hours of sunlight. If you're in the film, they had 12 hours of blue light and 12 hours of red light. Again, the director likes to be a little bit left of centre. The daylight was meant to be amber, and the moonlight was lit by a red dwarf sun, I think they call it, a dying sun or a dying star, and that was the moonlight, which is red. So the night exterior scenes had this redness about it. There's and occasionally I could get in to do a bit of blue stuff, but it was predominantly this red feel. Now you see that spotlight now there. If I'd have lit these scenes with individual lights like this up here, we would have had shafts of light everywhere. You know, the reflectors work very well for it. No, I did use floor units. I did have, but again, I had 12 by 12 gold lames or 6 by 6. You know, there's not every shot is lit by reflectors. On occasion, we did use lighting, of course. You know, whether it's Fresnels or open face. But I like reflective light. I'm a big fan of using reflectors. Even I'll always have a batch of 4 by 4 silver reflectors, or the Hungarians call them blendays. Is that right? And you know, anyway, that's another story. You know, I did have floor units. You know, but as you can see, the whole studio, the whole floor is the studio, is the set. So we had to be careful where we place things, and because the director wanted to do a lot of panning. This stuff here? Yeah. No, that was actual. This is the first AD actually doing it. It looks like Vin, but it's the first assistant director. We got a laser in, and that's why he's got his goggles on. Yeah. And we wanted a little bit more intricate than what we ended up with. Unfortunately, we ended up with. So it's like any movie. You start having all these plans to do things, and you end up with some sort of really Mickey Mouse sort of laser thing, and it had 3 rays in it, and we wanted this fancy grid thing, and you deal with what you do on the day, you know. But we actually shot that for real. At one stage he said, well, let's take his goggles off, and then he said, but he's got to have his eyes closed because it's a laser. I said, okay, well, let him have his eyes closed, we'll click our fingers and he can close his eyes, and then they'll digitally put his eyes back on. And they said, what the F, why don't we just leave his goggles on, you know? You know, these things get out of control, you know. There's some interesting things, you know the early scene where the sequence where Riddick is floating in the water, the opening, that was actually done dry for wet. And we built this harness thing that Vin was able to lay back on and recline. And Roscoe make a lighting effect projector. And they have ripple light, they have different effects. They're just these little discs that rotate. And we filled this little studio with smoke and shot it at 48 frames a second, I think it was. And then I just had up on a stand this Roscoe projector, and just to project the ripple effect, and then the visual effects put in the ambience of the water, the water atmosphere, and it worked pretty well. You know, because to get those sort of shots for real, we scouted an Olympic swimming pool in Montreal, and we did the whole thing, and we tanks and with portals, and they ended up saying, well, let's just shoot it dry for wet, and it worked well. And this here, that's actually Vin Diesel's double, or stuntman actually. Vin doesn't do these sort of things, you know. And this was shot with a 120. This is the wonderful thing about the Alexa. That's a 20K, straight at the lens, just a low stand, and off to the side there's a couple of reflectors coming in from the right. You can see just the glow. But that was in a studio space, and that's not dust, but it's a cork, like a breathable. So they say, you know. They give us all masks and goggles, and they say, but it's breathable, you know. And that was just shot directly on stage. But again, you can see that's for real. That's not visual effects stuff. Or ambience. We shot that for real.
And you said the wonderful thing about the Alexa. You mean the range?
The Alexa. We pointed at the 20K, and of course, when he moved out of shot, you could still see some detail. It just deals with that light so well. It's just amazing. We shot with 2 Alexas. I've only done 2 movies on digital. The first one was a film called Ironclad, which I shot on the Genesis, and then this is my first shoot on an Alexa, and I was pretty impressed. And I wouldn't hesitate to do it again. So we had 2 cameras, an A and B camera. I like A and B cameras. Some people don't. I will often put a B camera in even if the director doesn't want it, and I'll always sit them off at 90-degree opposed or 45-degree opposed and say to the B, because the B camera guy drives you nuts anyway, because he wants something to do, So you say, well, go over there and put a 200mm on and just get some confusion shots, Even if the director doesn't, the editor loves them, and I say, don't go down the line, don't go behind a camera because it's hard to cut. If you want to shorten or lengthen a scene, it's best to have a 90 degrees. So yeah, 2 cameras, and we had, and of course with the Alexa, unlike the old days with this lightweight Panaflex, but the Alexa just clip on and clip off, and so A and B camera. Look, I've done a fair few visual effects movies now, and you work in collaboration. Movie making is a collaborative effort, and Gunnar Hansen was the visual effects supervisor on this show, and yeah, you consulted and you work it out, and obviously they record all the lighting and so forth. You consulted. Storyboards are pretty good. We had a fantastic storyboard artist. I'll give you an example of some of his work if I can blow it up. As you can see, they're very, even the storyboards are very stylised. See this sort of thing here? And the director is pretty switched on. He's a smart cookie, and he got a very good storyboard artist. And we followed a lot of the storyboards pretty closely. On movies in the past, well, not all movies, often they're a guide, but some movies you get these piles of storyboards and then you never look at them again. But this storyboard artist is pretty good. As I said, if I got a shot in the movie that looked like the storyboard, I would have, you'd win awards. But pretty good storyboard artists, and for some of these sequences we followed them pretty closely. A DCP, and it was good. Who's seen it in the theatre? I think it does. It looks better in the theatre. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
what
not.
you're saying is very true.
It's not as like the end sequence and some of the sequence where Vin Diesel's chained up and the guy's speaking. I could see his face. You had detail in it, and the end sequence there when he's got that horn in his, you could see all that. Not a lot, but you could see it. But this is just you couldn't see it here. I'll preface my next screening with that. Make excuses up front. No, never thought about 3D. I've got to be honest, I'm not a 3D fan. I would opt to see a 2D film over a 3D. Then again, I'd love to have a go at it. I've never shot anything on 3D, but no, never thought about 3D on this film. There was a fair bit of fill light, and not heaps because it's a fairly stylised looking movie. I would have fill light and bounce fill, and I'd have guys with little reflector boards and flashlights even, Okay, here's a good example here. See the guy here? A Steadicam shot. Now that's a white bounce board with a flashlight in it. And that's the sequence where the guy gets chomped with the track. And you can move it around, and and if the camera moves, I'd often do this sort of thing with whiteboards or silver boards. It works really, really well. You know, simulates flashlight very well too. But no, there was fill light, and for the wide shots, as I said, this is more. If you look at that image there, let's see if it's red there. Okay, everybody come down here and look at this computer. But no, yes, I do use fill light. I grew up with film. You know, I've worked on like 40, 50 movies, and all of those have been film except 2. When I did Ironclad in Wales on the Genesis, I tended to stay by the camera, and I'd never go in and sit with the DIT or anything. But I got to admit that I did, by the end of Riddick, the Alexa and the image we had was so good, and having a raw file, I could switch to the raw file image to see whether I had enough detail, like looking at negative, you know. But it worked on Riddick pretty well, you know. But I've always been a person to sit back with a spot meter and read and buy the camera and take it. But no, I got a bit lazy. The lighting guys we had were pretty switched on. They presented me with these sort of things. This is a lighting plan. This is the main stage where the spaceships were. We only had one spaceship, couldn't afford 2. Now, for instance, this shows you, these are the grids here with the lights on it, the 10Ks. See, there's a 10K. And here the green represent the bounce, the LeMays. And we had more than those at the end. So they presented some pretty good floor plans. This is probably the most detailed plans I've ever had on any movie that I've worked on. Just to set, this is a green screen plan showing you how we positioned the green screens and had blacks in front of them. Had curtains all the way around. You can see here, there's the green line. That's green, and we could move it around on curtains, and of course we had sky pans and whatever lighting, translights, lighting the green screens. Yeah. The rule of thumb says anything less than 15 feet from green screen, you start to get pollution. With a film like this, which is predominantly a backlit, sidelit scenario, you can get away with it because it's the green screens in the background sort of thing. And we didn't have that many reflective surfaces to get, but visual effects just deal with that so well now. You know, they just window that area and take out the green. But you know, it's like even the green screen. You swing your meter around and it varies half a stop, 2/3 of a stop, quarter. When you first started, like the old blue screen days, you couldn't do that, but now they can just, you know, window that and pick a green and make it all that colour. No, we didn't have a lot of pollution. There's a little bit in the ship with them. There was a sequence where we had the bubble on the front of the spaceship. We took it off because we got, not only did we get we got green, but we got cameras and lighting and so forth. So we just took it off and they digitally put the windshield back in.
What's the green screen illuminated by?
We just had sky pans and translights and sky pans and just 5Ks, 10Ks, just whatever we had. It was a large area, you know, so and they just throw in blondies and just to pick out areas. No green gel, just bash it in. I was surprised sometimes because the greens vary so much, and I'd look at the visual effects guy and he'd say, "It's all right." You know, it makes life a bit easier for us. Not too bad because we had the whole studio space and it was minus 20 degrees outside. So as I said, it wasn't a real studio, it was a warehouse. They used to build trains there, and it wasn't too bad, you know. It's because we had wind machines, and that was another thing. Because we had wind, and then we got into problems with the LeMays, the gold LeMays, and suddenly you get movement, but you just deal with all these problems, you know. It's a logistic nightmare. It rains, smoke, dark, you know, whatever you name it, mud. And we had a technocrane for the whole shoot. We're 50-foot technocrane, and the floor space was concrete, and they made a lunar landscape. Just physically getting that around, it was like sort of, you know, just physically getting it from one spot to the next. But it was a great tool because with such an irregular surface, we could just reach into the floor space. It just saved a lot of time. It was great. I did okay. I felt sorry for the production designer. It seems to me that on a film, whenever the budget starts to get, the first person they attack is the art department. And when it comes down to lighting and camera and lenses, they really can't say, no, you can't have it, you know, because you've got to have them. And they can restrict you. Like you can go to some movies and they have so many lenses are sitting on the shelf they never use. You've got to be sensible and you've got to present a proper amount of equipment. But you know, but it wasn't too bad. It was just time of the days just got, you know, they cut the days. I would like another 10 days on the shoot. One of the toughest things on this movie is it was we'd start work at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning, and it's 12-hour day with 1 hour lunch, so it's a 13-hour day. And the actors have a 12-hour turnaround from hotel room to hotel room. So the next day you'd start at 9, and so by Friday we're starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and working into the Saturday morning, and it was just a tough shoot from that point of view, you know. I'll just show you some stills here. That's me, whatever I'm doing. Just to give you an idea, you know, the densities here are probably truer, a bit redder, but truer to what we had. As you see, it's all cluttered as usual. Look, because it's fairly stylised, you try and put splashes and chisel it as much as you can, you know, and put one, you know, if it's a day scene, you put one big light source, but this was, you know, fairly restrictive as far as lighting interiors on this. We didn't have a lot of windows and we didn't have a lot of light sources, so it's a little bit up and down in some of the sets, but it was mainly just trying little pools and shafts of light, you know. Through a lot of floor lighting because the set pieces had ceilings, so you'd have to come off the set and move, and I don't mind moving lights with actors if they're, you know, as long as you don't see too much shadow movement. But it was floor lighting, you know, and obviously art department lighting. I try and get involved with the art department and say, well, you know, you can provide these practicals and these work lights and give me a bunch of these and I'll position them and utilise those. And you know, if you've got a desk lamp that the art department's provided, I'll put that and I'll supplement that with a film light somewhere. But you know, it's a bit hard on a film like this to do an overall lighting pattern on those interiors, especially that one where they're all in the quarters. And this sort of thing here, see, this is called the LOD, whatever it was, and the art department just gave us these plastic guns, and the thing is that, so you know, my poor lighting guys had to come up with how we're going to, and these are LEDs that we got a guy to provide for us. That gun is sort of derived from this sort of testing. You know, where you get the guy coming with the LED specialist and we do all these different little patterns and work out. So we say, okay, can you coil it? So we ended up coiling it and we ended up saying, well, it's got the art department, you've got to make this gun so it'll sort of fit you know, fit in there, and then we put more LEDs down here, and then visual effects took over and did the lightning effect out the end, and whenever they did that and fired it, and of course we had to have these on dimmers because the director said he wants it to pulse. There you go, you know. So you spent weeks working and then he says he wants it to pulse, and about a day before you're shooting with it. So, okay, so you've got electrics, you've got a cable running down the guy's leg, and there's electrics. One guy, his job is just to sit there on the dimmer and pulse it down. And then, of course, when he fires it, you've got to have interactive lighting. So then I'd have lightning strikes machines placed, so when they go zzz, and you notice there's a sequence where they all come out of the spaceship, out of at the end where they're shooting all the creatures, and the girl's got the LOD, and so you've got strobes and you've got lightning machines, lightning strikes, and all these things going off, and you've got all electrics encrypted with buttons and things all firing as you just go crazy. And then visual effects get it and sort it out and make it work. You know. But visual effects looks really well with interactive lighting. You know, the more interactive lighting you do with their effects, the better it'll work. The sequence at the end where Riddick and John's character are slashing and killing all those creatures, and they've got the power packs on their back, and the actors, we had all these columns set up around, and they choreographed it and rehearsed it with stunts, and they had these watermelons on the top of each of the columns, and then Vin would go around with his knife and slash the top watermelon in half, and then visual effects would, you know, put in the creature, and then Johns would fire the gun, and another one, and then the thing would explode. So everything was worked out pretty well as far as the fight sequences and fighting creatures, you know. Things like the scene early on where Vin slides in and cuts the big mud demon's belly open and so forth. You know, they had to put platforms an inch under the water and in and out. Amazing, those big creatures. That pool was only about 18 inches deep, but all these creatures came out of it. This is one of the shots taken from the DIT. That's how we actually see it on the day. Again, you know, the LeMays worked really well. It was pretty good to grade because I was able to maintain a certain consistency and continuity in the lighting and the exposure. Because I'm on stage, I'm controlling it. You know, whereas Mother Nature dictates to you when you're outside, whether it's overcast or whatever, and it's often a bit harder to grade a film that's shot entirely outside. That's why you always try and backlight, side light. Being on stage, I was able to maintain a fairly good continuity and consistency of lighting, and so the grade it still took 3 weeks. Part of the problem is, you know, when you go in to do a DI these days, especially with a film like this, they're sampling all the visual effects shots too. You know, sampling visual effects, but it's supposed to be my time to do the grade. We want to look at it, so, you know, 3 hours later you start to grade the film, but because they want to see the visual effects. This shoot was 48 days, which is supposed to be 5-day weeks, but as I said before, you know, we'd finish at 3, start at 3 on a Friday and finish at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, and it's like working 6 days getting paid for 5, and you know, every Monday, and then you're back at 7 o'clock Monday morning, and it's like jet lag. It's hopeless. I was only 2 hours away from Quebec City, and I wanted to go and see. I never got there because I was just wrecked on the Sunday. You know, and of course you'd have to have a few drinks on the Saturday when you're up at 6 in the morning. So as you always do. Any more? Good day. Thanks, guys.